I used to be the last one to pay my school fees. I still remember the embarrassment when my teacher reminded me in front of my classmates. It wasn't a big amount, and I kept wondering why my parents didn't pay it. That experience made me obsessed with saving. I promised myself my kids would never go through that. The Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel has been a huge help in keeping my promise. In this video, we break down key lessons from the Psychology of Money, insights that will change how you think about wealth, risk, saving, and success. This is part 1. Let's dive in. Number 1. No one's crazy. Your personal experience with money might make up just 1/1000% of everything that's ever happened in the world, but it probably shapes about 80% of how you think the world works. Economists have found that people's lifetime investment decisions are deeply influenced by the economic conditions they experienced during their own generation, especially in early adulthood. Take stocks, for example. If you were born in 1970, the S&P 500 grew nearly tenfold, adjusted for inflation, during your teens and 20s. That's an incredible return. But if you were born in 1950, the market went virtually nowhere in real terms during that same period of your life. Two people, separated only by the year they were born, can go through life with completely different views of how the stock market works. Every financial decision people make is justified by taking the information they have at the moment and plugging it into their unique mental model of how the world works. They might be misinformed. They might have incomplete information. They might fall for persuasive marketing. They might misjudge the consequences of their actions. But every financial decision makes sense to the person making it, at least in that moment. It checks the boxes they believe need to be checked. They tell themselves a story about what they're doing and why. And that story is shaped by their own unique experiences. Take a simple example: lottery tickets. Americans spend more on lottery tickets than they do on movies, video games, music, sporting events, and books combined. And who buys them? Mostly lower-income households. The lowest-income households in the U.S., on average, spend $412 a year on lottery tickets, 4 times as much as the highest-income households. At the same time, about 40% of Americans say they couldn't come up with $400 in an emergency, which means the people spending $400 a year on lottery tickets are often the same people who say they couldn't cover a $400 emergency. They're sacrificing their safety net for a 1 in a million shot at hitting it big. That might seem crazy to me. It probably seems crazy to you too. But I'm not in the lowest income group, and chances are you're not either. So it's hard, maybe impossible, for us to fully understand the subconscious reasoning behind those decisions. But you can imagine it going something like this. We live paycheck to paycheck. Saving feels impossible. Our wages aren't going up. We can't afford vacations, new cars, health insurance, or a safe neighborhood. Sending our kids to college means a mountain of debt. But buying a lottery ticket? That's the one moment we get to hold a tangible dream in our hands. Number 2, luck and risk. Luck and risk are siblings. They both reflect the reality that outcomes in life are often shaped by forces beyond individual effort. Years ago, the author asked economist Robert Shiller, a Nobel Prize winner, what he wished we could better understand about investing. His answer: the exact role of luck in successful outcomes. No one seriously believes that luck plays no role in financial success. But because luck is difficult to measure, and because it feels rude to imply someone's success might be due to it, we often ignore it altogether. But acknowledging luck and risk can change the way you think about success and failure in a healthy way. Here are 2 simple takeaways. Be careful who you praise and admire. Be careful who you criticize or look down on. Some people are born into families that prioritize education, others are not. Some grow up in thriving economies that encourage entrepreneurship. Others are raised in war zones or poverty. Not all success is the result of hard work. Not all poverty is the result of laziness. Keep that in mind when judging others and yourself. As Scott Galloway puts it, nothing is ever as good or as bad as it seems. This is why it's often wiser to focus less on individuals and more on broad patterns. Case studies of specific people, especially billionaires, CEOs, or massive failures, tend to be misleading. They're extreme outcomes, often shaped by equally extreme levels of luck or risk. The more exceptional the story, the less applicable it might be to your own life. You'll get closer to practical, actionable insights by looking for common patterns of success and failure. Because the more common the pattern, the more likely it is that you can apply it to your own journey. Number 3, never enough. For a significant part of society, including many of the wealthiest and most powerful people, there seems to be no clear limit on what enough means. In 2008, as Goldman Sachs faced the wrath of the financial crisis, Warren Buffett planned to invest $5 billion to help the bank survive. Rajat Gupta, a retired millionaire and Goldman board member, learned about the deal before it became public. Knowing it would send Goldman stock soaring, he immediately bought 175,000 shares and made a quick $1 million. He went to prison for insider trading. His career and reputation were permanently destroyed. Gupta had everything: immense wealth, prestige, power, freedom. And he threw it all away because he wanted more. He had no sense of enough. We need to remember a few things. Number 1, the hardest financial skill is getting the goalpost to stop moving. If your expectations rise as your results improve, there's no point in striving for more, because you'll never feel like you've arrived. It becomes dangerous when the taste of having more money, more power, more status, increases ambition faster than satisfaction. As the saying goes, happiness equals results minus expectations. Number 2, social comparison is the trap. Imagine a rookie baseball player making $500,000 a year. By most standards, he's rich. But suppose he plays on the same team as Mike Trout, who has $35.8 million a year. Compared to him, the rookie feels broke. Mike Trout might look at Warren Buffett, who made $3.5 billion in 2018. And even Buffett could look at Jeff Bezos, whose net worth rose by $24 billion that same year, more per hour than the baseball player earned in a full year. The ceiling for comparison is so high, no one ever reaches it, which means it's a game you can't win. The only way to win is not to play, to accept that you might already have enough, even if it's less than what others have. Number 3, there are things never worth risking, no matter the potential reward. Your reputation is invaluable. Your freedom and independence are invaluable. Your family and friends are invaluable. Being loved by the people you love is invaluable. Your happiness is invaluable. And your best shot at keeping those things is knowing when it's time to stop taking risks that might destroy them. It's knowing when you have enough. You need to define what enough means to you. Maybe it's working 3 days a week so you can spend more time with your kids. Maybe it's being able to take your parents to any restaurant they want. Maybe it's simply having enough money to cover your family's medical bills. Everyone has their own version of enough. What matters is knowing yours, because that's when you stop chasing things you don't truly want. Number 4, confounding compounding. $81.5 billion of Warren Buffett's $84.5 billion net worth came after his 65th birthday. Consider this thought experiment. Buffett began serious investing when he was just 10 years old. By the time he was 30, his net worth was $1 million, or $9.3 million adjusted for inflation. But what if he was more typical? Spending his teens and 20s exploring the world and finding his passion, with a net worth of just $25,000 at age 30. Let's say he still earned his extraordinary investment returns, about 22% annually, but retired at age 60 to play golf and spend time with his grandkids. What would his net worth be today? Not $84.5 billion, around $11.9 million. That's 99.9% less than his actual net worth. His skill is investing, but his secret is time. That's how compounding works. Think about it another way. Buffett is the richest investor of all time. But he's not necessarily the greatest, at least not when measured by average annual returns. Jim Simons, head of the hedge fund Renaissance Technologies, has compounded money at 66% annually since 1988. No one comes close to this record. Buffett's annualized return is roughly 22%, about a third of Simon's rate. Yet Simon's net worth today is about $21 billion, which is, and I know this sounds crazy given the numbers, 75% less than Buffett's net worth. Why the difference if Simon's is such a better investor? Because Simon's didn't find his investment stride until he was 50 years old. He's had less than half as many years to compound as Buffett. If Simon's had earned his 66% annual return for the full 70 years Buffett has been investing, he would be worth, please hold your breath, 63 quintillion, 900 quadrillion, 781 trillion, 780 billion, 748 million, $160,000. Good investing isn't necessarily about chasing the highest returns. The highest returns tend to be one-off hits that can't be repeated. It's about earning pretty good returns consistently, returns you can stick with and repeat over the longest possible period of time. That's when compounding really runs wild. Number 5. Getting wealthy versus staying wealthy. Good investing is not necessarily about making good decisions. It's about consistently not screwing up. Getting money requires taking risks, being optimistic, and putting yourself out there. But keeping money requires the opposite of taking risk. It requires humility and fear that what you've made can be taken away from you just as fast. It requires frugality and an acceptance that at least some of what you've made is attributable to luck. So past success can't be relied upon to repeat indefinitely. Applying the survival mindset to the real world comes down to appreciating 3 things. You need to be able to stick around long enough for compounding to work wonders. Compounding only works if you can give an asset years and years to grow. It's like planting oak trees. A year of growth will never show much progress. 10 years can make meaningful difference, and 50 years can create something absolutely extraordinary. Planning is important, but the most important part of every plan is to plan on the plan not going according to plan. If there's enough room for error in your savings rate that you can say, it'd be great if the market returns 8% a year over the next 30 years, but if it only does 4% a year, I'll still be okay. Room for error, often called margin of safety, is one of the most underappreciated forces in finance. It comes in many forms: a frugal budget, flexible thinking, and a loose timeline. Anything that lets you live happily with a range of outcomes. It's different from being conservative. Conservative is avoiding a certain level of risk. Margin of safety is raising the odds of success at a given level of risk by increasing your chances of survival. Its magic is that the higher your margin of safety, the smaller your edge needs to be to have a favorable outcome. A barbelled personality, optimistic about the future, but paranoid about what will prevent you from getting the future, is vital. Economies, markets, and careers often follow a similar path: growth amid loss. Here's how the U.S. economy performed over the last 170 years. But do you know what happened during this period? Where do we begin? Roughly 99.9% of all companies that were created went out of business. 33 recessions lasted a cumulative 48 years. The number of forecasters who predicted any of those recessions rounds to 0. Stocks lost a third of their value at least 12 times. The words economic pessimism appeared in newspapers at least 29,000 times, according to Google. Our standard of living increased 20-fold in these 170 years. But barely a day went by that lacked tangible reasons for pessimism. A mindset that can be paranoid and optimistic at the same time is hard to maintain, because seeing things as black or white takes less effort than accepting nuance. But you need short-term paranoia to keep you alive long enough to exploit long-term optimism. Number 6. Tails, you win. You can be wrong half the time and still make a fortune. When you accept that tails drive everything in business, investing, and finance, you realize that it's normal for lots of things to go wrong, break, fail, and fall. If you're a good stock picker, you'll be right maybe half the time. If you're a good leader, maybe half of your product and strategy ideas will work. If you're a good investor, most years will be just okay, and plenty will be bad. If you're a good worker, you'll find the right company in the right field after several attempts and trials. And that's if you're good. Take Amazon. It's not intuitive to think a failed product launch at a major company would be normal and fine. Intuitively, you'd think the CEO should apologize to shareholders. But CEO Jeff Bezos said shortly after the disastrous launch of the company's Fire Phone, "If you think that's a big failure, we're working on much bigger failures right now." I am not kidding. Some of them are going to make the Fire Phone look like a tiny little blip. It's okay for Amazon to lose a lot of money of the Fire Phone, because it will be offset by something like Amazon Web Services that earns tens of billions of dollars. Tails to the rescue. Number 7. Freedom. Having a strong sense of controlling one's life is a more dependable predictor of positive feelings of well-being than any of the objective conditions of life we have considered. More than your salary, more than the size of your house, more than the prestige of your job. Control over doing what you want, when you want to, with the people you want to, is the broadest lifestyle variable that makes people happy. Money's greatest intrinsic value, and this can't be overstated, is its ability to give you control over your time, to obtain, bit by bit, a level of independence and autonomy that comes from unspent assets that give you greater control over what you can do and when you can do it. A small amount of wealth means the ability to take a few days of work when you're sick without breaking the bank. Gaining that ability is huge if you don't have it. A bit more means waiting for a good job to come around after you get laid off, rather than having to take the first one you find. That can be life-changing. 6 months emergency expenses means not being terrified of your boss, because you know you won't be ruined if you have to take some time off to find a new job. More still means the ability to take a job with lower pay but flexible hours, maybe one with a shorter commute, or being able to deal with a medical emergency without the added burden of worrying about how you'll pay for it. Then retiring when you want to instead of when you need to. Using your money to buy time and options has a lifestyle benefit few luxury goods can compete with. If you want more summarized books, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you never miss an upload. Number 8. Man in the car paradox. When you see someone driving a nice car, you rarely think, "Wow, the guy driving that car is cool." Instead, you think, "Wow, if I had that car, people would think I'm cool." Because you thought a fancy car sent such a strong signal to others that you made it. You're smart. You're rich. You have taste. You're important. Look at me. If respect and admiration are our goal, be careful how you seek it. Humility, kindness, and empathy will bring you more respect than horsepower ever will. Number 9. Wealth is what you don't see. We tend to judge wealth by what we see because that's the information we have in front of us. We can't see people's bank accounts or brokerage statements, so we rely on outward appearances to gauge financial success. Cars, homes, Instagram photos. When most people say they want to be a millionaire, what they might actually mean is, "I'd like to spend $1 million." And that is literally the opposite of being a millionaire. Investor Bill Mann once wrote, "There is no faster way to feel rich than to spend lots of money on really nice things. But the way to be rich is to spend money you have and to not spend money you don't have. It's really that simple." We should be careful to define the difference between wealth and rich. One study in the U.S. found that people tend to overestimate the number of calories they burn during a workout by a factor of 4. As a result, someone who burns 400 calories might think they've burned much more, and end up consuming around 800 calories afterward, roughly twice what they actually expended. The truth is, it's easy to undo the benefits of exercise by overeating, and most of us do. Exercise is like being rich. You think, "I did the work and I now deserve to treat myself to a big meal." Wealth is turning down that treat meal and actually burning net calories. It's hard and requires self-control, but it creates a gap between what you could do and what you choose to do that accrues to you over time. Number 10. Save money. Past a certain level of income, people tend to fall into 3 groups. Those who save, those who don't think they can save, those who don't think they need to save. This message is for the latter 2. The first idea, simple but powerful, is that building wealth has far less to do with income or investment returns and far more to do with your savings rate. Wealth is just the money left over after you spend what you earn. You don't need a high income to build wealth, but you have no chance of building wealth without a high savings rate. More importantly, the value of wealth is relative to what you need. Let's say you and I have the same net worth. And let's say you're a better investor than I am. You earn 12% annual returns, while I earn just 8%. But I live more efficiently. I need half as much money to be happy, while your lifestyle grows as fast as your returns. In that case, I'm better off than you are, despite being a worse investor. I'm getting more utility from my money, even though my returns are lower. The same logic applies to income. Learning to be happy with less creates a gap between what you have and what you want, just like a higher paycheck would, but without needing a raise, and it's completely within your control. Beyond a certain level of income, what you need is often just what sits below your ego. Everyone needs the basics, like food, shelter, security. Once those are covered, there's a level of comfort, then entertainment, then indulgence. But spending beyond a modest lifestyle is usually just ego. Spending to show people you have or had money. Think of it this way. One of the most powerful ways to increase your savings isn't to raise your income. It's to raise your humility. If you define savings as the gap between your ego and your income, it becomes clear why so many people with good income save so little. It's a constant daily battle against the instinct to show off, to flash your peacock feathers in a world where everyone else is doing the same. But here's the truth. Many people have more control over their ability to save than they think. You can save more by spending less. You can spend less by desiring less. And you will desire less if you stop caring about what others think of you. Also, you don't need a specific reason to save. Yes, saving for a house, a car, or retirement is great. But saving just to save is powerful and essential. Saving only for a specific goal assumes life is predictable, but it isn't. Saving is your hedge against life's ability to surprise you at the worst possible moment. Money saved without a set goal gives you options. It gives you the flexibility to wait, the space to think, the freedom to pivot. It gives you back control. Every dollar saved is a future decision that you, not someone else, get to make. That flexibility is a hidden return on wealth. It doesn't show up on a spreadsheet, but it's real. What's the real benefit of having enough cash in the bank to leave a toxic job, take time off, or retire early? It's incalculable. In a hyper-connected world, your competition has gone from a few hundred in your town to millions across the globe. This is especially true for knowledge-based jobs like marketing, teaching, consulting, medicine, and more. So how do you stand out? Not with intelligence. Not anymore. Intelligence is no longer a durable advantage in a world this connected. But flexibility is. In a world where technical skills are automated and intelligence is commoditized, your edge is in soft skills, communication, emotional intelligence, and above all, adaptability. Flexibility gives you the freedom to wait for great career opportunities, learn new skills without panic, say no when others can't, find your path at your own pace. And all of that is built on saving, not for a thing, but for yourself. In a world where everything is changing fast, control over your time and choices may be the most valuable currency there is.